So, welcome back to what is the penultimate, the next to last uh, day of this class. Hopefully, you all are doing well. So, there isn't actually a huge amount of material to go over as far as the lecture. Today's lecture was concerned. Most of what we talked about is how to set up a web server, how you would go about getting a domain, registering a domain name. Honestly, to register a domain name, you get out your credit card and pay somebody to do that. How to get a web server set up. And again, if you're looking for that 24/7 level of uptime and you really want to have a web app that's always available, typically either you need to work at a university where they have those resources available for you, or companies, especially when they're starting up, tend to get out a credit card, pay somebody to do it because it's a lot better that way. So the one thing that we did talk a little bit about in the videos, and I do want to go over a little bit here just as sort of new material, was just the certificates. So if you ever want, and I don't know that you can see this here, in the web browser itself, right, where you have that URL bar, the little address bar at the top, there is that, and this is Firefox, every browser has something similar, the little lock or something telling you when you're using HTTPS. So here I happen to be on the Replit site, and if you click on that lock, what you can do is actually get information about the certificates that we're using for that HTTPS connection. That S stands for security or secure, uses this process called SSL. But by clicking on that, you can actually pull up the certificate that that site has. So I did this a little bit earlier just to speed things along. And because actually the way I have to pull up that certificate doesn't use the web browser, so you actually can't see it in this video. But when you do that, what you're going to get to is a page like this. This is Firefox's way of showing the certificate from Replit. So you can see that, the name of this is Replit, that this has been in San Francisco, California. You can see who issued them their certificate. So typically you can have what's called a self-signed certificate. You can create a certificate which you say, hey, this is my certificate. I trust that this is totally perfect. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's perfectly good from a security perspective, but it does make it easier for hackers to get involved. And so we don't usually do that. Instead, we rely on this, it's called the web of trust. This idea that we're going to have this whole web where everybody's going to be connected to everybody else to show how we can trust the process. So the company that issued Replit its certificate is called Cloudflare. You can see that name right here. We have, I can make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to read. You can see it's got dates that it's valid from. So it started on December 3rd, 2019, and it'll run through October 9th that this certificate will be acceptable. It shows where that certificate can be used. So we can use this certificate on the computer named Replit, the repl.it, or with the star, anything, any computer that's named something .replit. Now, of course, we are using this for security. When we're doing HTTPS-based connections, we are going to have all of the data, all of the information from the server to the client, from the client to the server, will be encrypted. And in order to do that encryption, we need some way of encrypting the data. Now, we need to be able to agree on how the data are going to be encrypted, and we need to be able to agree on that without having some alternate way of sending that key between the two computers. Since we don't have a trusted way of sharing a key, we have to use public key encryption. And so all of HTTPS is based off of public key encryption. And so you can see right here, what the algorithm is. So the approach that this certificate is using is not RSA. I'll show an example of RSA in a little bit. This is actually using something called elliptical curve encryption. So this is another type of encryption. It's a little bit more modern. The key size here is 256 bits. So that is 256 zeros and ones. And then using, honestly, really fancy advanced math that I don't understand because I'm not that smart, you can encode and keep things a secret using some properties of elliptical curves. And if you're really interested in this, it's a really interesting area of research for both math and computer science. It's where the two of them come together. Certainly something you can get involved in. And so in addition to saying that we're using elliptical curve cryptography, that the key size is 256 bits, you can actually see the beginning of the public key here. And while this is written out 0473B7, this is really a way of encoding that really big number in this format. So in addition, you can see how it's got the serial number, and you can actually see that those PEM files. So the PEM file for the certificate, and if you remember when we were doing encryption last week, we would actually generate these PEM files, right? That is the actual certificate. And so you can download it. That would be Replit certificate, the way it's sharing the public key. I actually did that. And when you download it, you actually see this file right here. So this is the PEM file. You notice it looks almost identical to the file that the way that we were sharing public keys last week, because it's using the exact same technologies. It's the exact same idea. Our computer, my computer, when it connects to Replit, is able to read in this certificate and use that to make sure all the traffic is encrypted. Similar to how we did it last week. So in addition to that, you can see it's got two fingerprints here, a SHA-256, SHA-1. These are two different hashing algorithms. So part of the idea of this is it's going to share that hashed algorithm of that hashed result of our certificate. And this is another way to build up that trust. One issue that always occurs is if there was what's called a man-in-the-middle attack or person-in-the-middle attack, where somebody intercepts all of the traffic from Replit and replaces it with something else. They could, of course, intercept the actual Replit certificate and instead provide their own certificate. To defeat that, part of what we do is we use hashing. We use that hashing algorithm, and we're going to send at a separate time what the hashed result of this certificate will be. And what my computer can do, and what my computer does do, and your computer does do, your browser does do when it makes that connection, is it's going to check to make sure that when it hashes that certificate, it gets this correct result. And what that does is that helps really defeat those person-in-the-middle attacks, because now not only would they have to be able to get themselves in the middle of this connection, which is fairly hard, but they would have to have a way to generate a new perfectly valid certificate that has the exact same fingerprint. And while all of the hashing algorithms, all of this process is just math, and so mathematically speaking, that is possible, the reality is you're looking at many years of computer time to try to do that, at least as best as we can tell. So for all purposes, it's going to be much more secure. You can see the purposes of this, different information. And then what you can see down here, and sort of the important part, is this authority info and certificate policies. And so the certificate policies, that's just telling us how these certificates are going to work. More importantly is the authority info. Like I said, all of the web works on this idea of the web of trust. So I have this certificate from Replit, and I know that it says it's from Replit, that the signature seems to be the same, the fingerprint seems to be the same. But the question would be, how do I know to trust that this really was from Replit? And the answer is that not only does Replit send its certificate, but it also sends a certificate and a signature from whoever issued it. And so in this case, it is from that Cloudflare company. And what's going to happen is they're going to provide us another certificate. And so we can actually see the full certificates we get there. You can see there are 3 of them. And what this is this is telling us not only the information for Replit, but the information for Cloudflare. And you can see Cloudflare also provided their certificate, and we get all sorts of information. You can see it's been trusted longer, that they're using elliptical curve, all sorts of information, that their certificate can be used to sign other certificates. But you can also see that not only did Cloudflare do this, but Cloudflare itself was issued a certificate from this company, Baltimore Cyber Trust. And so we can even, in fact, look up their certificate. And Baltimore Cyber Trust, you can see this is a much bigger certificate. It was made available in 2000, which I realize means that the certificate is potentially older than some of you. It will run through 2025. This one happens to be using RSA encryption, probably because I don't think elliptical curve existed in 2000. Different key size. So here we have 2048, much bigger key because we need that for security. Again, it's got its fingerprints. And you'll note this one isn't signed. And the reason why this one isn't signed is this is one of the root authorities. So that is to say, it is one of the organizations that people have agreed we're all going to trust. And part of how we're all going to trust it is, in addition to the certificate that Cloudflare provided us in this link, my browser and actually my operating system have a copy of that certificate. They come pre-installed with that because everybody knows to trust them. And so what typically happens is most organizations will, when they want to create their certificate, they'll get it from their certificate issuer and so on until you get to eventually one of these root organizations. And so by tracking back to that root organization, we're going to be able to verify every step along the way to make sure that a certificate is valid. And now it is true that this does depend on those root organizations. It does depend on all of those steps going about it. But now one thing that Cloudflare or any company can do is they can actually revoke, and they have occasionally revoked a certificate, said, nope, this one has been compromised. We know that this computer's been hacked, whatever. We're no longer going to swear it. And actually the same thing can happen to a root authority. This doesn't happen very often because they're highly trustworthy companies and there's lots of security built in and there's lots of analysis built in. But what will happen is if we don't trust that root authority, if it gets compromised in some way, they will simply no longer include its certificate in my browser, in my operating system. And that's frequently when you get a message coming up warning you of a lack of trust, saying, hey, this might be a dangerous site. It's because we no longer accept either the certificate that site has offered, or it's the certifying authority, certificate authority that issued its certificate, or so on and so forth, all the way back. Somewhere along that chain, we don't trust it, and so it might be compromised. So just to give you another example of how this might work, we could load up actually I have to do this. I found out earlier today that UB does not, you can see all the different links I have. By default, UB does not go to HTTPS for reasons I don't know, but I can load up the secure version, pull up the information we get, the certificates we get for UB. So this is from UB's website. So you can see that this is for UB and that it's at 501 Capon Hall is a place to connect to. Now it uses a different organization for its certifying authority, its certificate authority. It's using this InCommon. And its certificate was valid starting on June 27th of 2018 and running for 2 years. You can see that this certificate can be used by buffalo.edu, anything.buffalo.edu, so one thing. And then you can see this long list of web pages, aging research, www.agingresearch.buffalo.edu, www.alumni. Any of these computers, wow, I wonder what Bullseye is. www.bullseye.buffalo.edu, www.cat.buffalo.edu, which I realize has nothing to do with cats, but it just amuses me. Celebrate, www.celebrate.buffalo.edu. Somewhere I thought there would be CSE, but apparently we're not covered by that. Interesting. Jewish Studies and Jewish Thought apparently have two different servers. You can see any of these computers would be able to use it. You can see this is a key. This certificate uses RSA. RSA and elliptical curve are both perfectly acceptable. Both are perfectly secure. Just a matter of which one you want to use. Couple different, more sort of boilerplate stuff, what it works with. And in fact, if we want, we can look at InCommon, the company that issued our UB's certificate. You can see it's part of the Internet 2, this group of academic sites that do that. It's a much longer certificate. It's going to last for 10 years. And then it's able to sign certificates. And of course, it came from this user trust. So another one of those root level authorities. This one, like I said, user trust RSA certification authority. And you can see its information there. So we have that same web going on. So this is sort of how all of the security on the internet works. We all have these different certificates, or if we want to use HTTPS, we get these different certificates. We have that web of trust. We show how that certifying authority, that certificate authority, we're there, why we should trust them, why we should trust the organization that they trust, and so on, until we get back to those root levels. And doing this, we're actually able to keep pretty good security. So that's the main material I had. I was just curious. I have all of Replit here. If any of you have any questions about security, about other things that have gone on this semester, this is sort of the, as the title says, the general live Q&A. If you have any more general questions, this would be the time to ask it. Okay, I don't see any questions coming up. If that's the case, that's fine. We'll actually end today a little early. Just so you know what's coming up on Friday. So Friday there will be a short little announcement set of videos, possibly with probably including, I don't know, some sort of guest or something fun just to celebrate the end of the semester. The majority of Friday, what I'm planning on doing for Friday is just running these Q&As and doing one specifically around the final exam. So any questions that you might have about the final exam itself, about content that will appear on the final exam, about the process of taking or, grading is going to be done by UB Learns, but grading the final exam, please bring them, ask them on Friday. So one other quick thing to know, mail about this. This will be a post in Piazza appearing as soon as I'm done with this video. There is going to be a slight change in the way that I'm running the final exam. This change is both meaningless for some of you who may have been choosing to do it anyway, but hopefully we're not. One thing I'm going to say is I'm going to encourage students to have a page of notes available to them as they take the final exam. The page of notes has to be their own notes. They can't use somebody else's notes. They certainly can't get notes from somebody else. You should not be going onto the web during the final exam. If you want to bring more than a page of notes, please don't. You're going to lose a lot of time constantly flipping through your pages trying to find information. The reason for allowing a page of notes is the test is going to be automatically graded. We're going to be using UB Learns. I am doing a lot of work to make sure the maximum number of valid answers are accepted, but it is going to be still done by a computer. There's going to be some finickiness to, making sure you don't have typos and that sort of thing. Typos can cause problems, as you've seen. That's how computers work. It's important, but it can be a problem. So to help make it easier for you to check your own work, if you just have a page of notes that just has those important little details you absolutely have to get correct, function names or that sort of idea, please put it in you can have that page of notes. You can refer to that as you're reviewing an answer. Remember, you're not going to be able to go backward. And hopefully that will make it so that if you don't understand the material, you still won't, you'll still obviously have a hard time. The grades will reflect students' honest understanding of the material. That's the point of an assessment, of a test. But at the same time, the grades will reflect students' actual understanding of the material and not just simply their ability to type without making a typo. So given that, like I said, I'll have more of a Q&A on Friday. If you have questions then, if you have questions before then, I have an office hour on Friday also, and obviously Piazza will be up. And make sure you stay safe, make sure you stay healthy as best you can, and make sure you get to have a little bit of fun. Thank you all, and I will talk to you all on Friday. Bye.